The skies over the Middle East have never been more suffocating or fraught with danger than they are tonight. As the world watches the escalating conflict between the United States and Iran, an unprecedented event has occurred that is shaking the foundation of global military analysis. The B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, long considered the invincible phantoms of the United States Air Force, just encountered a defensive entity known as the Russian Shield. This was no ordinary military engagement. It was a moment that redefined the very concept of modern warfare. We are talking about aircraft worth $2 billion each, designed to penetrate the most heavily defended airspace on the planet without leaving a single trace on radar screens. However, as they transitioned into Iranian airspace for a high-stakes mission targeting strategic underground bunkers in Tehran, American pilots faced something that defied all conventional logic. It's an invisible electronic wall, a sophisticated technological interference that experts describe as being from another world, suddenly rendered their billion-dollar systems nearly useless. This operation was planned with surgical precision, aimed at neutralizing the underground command center, where senior Iranian military leaders were reportedly hiding. According to intelligence reports, the strike was intended to take less than 50 seconds to fundamentally alter the strategic balance of the region. But as the B-2 bombers entered the target range, their advanced navigation systems and sensors began to malfunction in inexplicable ways. Satellite signals were distorted, and control displays flickered with unidentified data streams. This was the moment the Russian Shield revealed itself. It was not a barrage of conventional anti-aircraft missiles, but a deeply integrated electronic warfare system capable of bending data and creating a total zone of blindness. Sources suggest that Russia has secretly deployed its latest experimental technologies to protect its Iranian ally, turning the skies of Tehran into an electronic fortress. This placed American pilots in a desperate situation, forcing them to make split-second life-or-death decisions in a landscape where their technology was no longer the ultimate authority. This encounter does not just raise questions about American stealth capabilities. It reveals a profound and dangerous military alliance between Moscow and Tehran. As the bombers struggled to maintain their trajectory, they realized they were flying into a prearranged technological trap. What was initially envisioned as a lightning strike to decapitate the regime's military leadership has transformed into a high-stakes geopolitical chess game. Tensions have reached a breaking point as the Pentagon works to verify the source of this interference, while analysts call this a turning point in the regional power balance. The appearance of the Russian Shield is not merely a technological challenge, but a stark political message too. Washington regarding Russian influence in this volatile theater? The technological anomaly encountered by the B-2 squadron over the Alborz Mountains was not merely a localized jamming effort. It was the activation of a multi-layered defense architecture that the Pentagon has begun to refer to as the Russian Shield. For decades, the United States has relied on the stealth characteristics of the B-2 Spirit's low radar cross-section and radar absorbent materials to remain invisible. But what happened over Tehran suggests that the rules of engagement have been rewritten by an unseen hand. Intelligence analysts believe that Russia has deployed its most classified electronic warfare system, the Cross-4, integrated with the sophisticated S-400 and S-500 radar networks, directly into the heart of Iran's defense grid. This integration has created what pilots are calling a non-kinetic wall. It is a phenomenon where the aircraft's sensors are not just jammed, but are fed ghost data, phantom targets, false altitudes, and inverted spatial coordinates that make traditional navigation impossible. As the bombers reach the point of no return, the cockpit displays, which usually provide a godlike view of the battlefield, began to show signatures that were out of this world. Pilots reported seeing multiple unidentified aerial phenomena on their screens that moved at velocities exceeding Mach 20, defying the known laws of physics. However, these were not alien spacecraft. They were digital illusions projected by the Russian shield to overwhelm the B-2's processing units. This level of cognitive electronic warfare represents a leap in technology that Western intelligence had estimated was still a decade away. The primary objective of this shield is to protect the Iranian command and control bunkers from the very precision strikes that were meant to end the conflict in less than 1 minute. By distorting the GPS signals and laser guidance systems of the B-2's payload, the shield effectively creates a sanctuary for the Iranian leadership, rendering the most expensive weapons in the American arsenal blind and toothless. This development has sent shockwaves through the halls of the Pentagon. The B-2 Spirit, the apex predator of the skies, KP, be neutralized by an electronic dome. The entire strategy of American power projection is at risk. Military experts argue that this is the first time we are seeing a total denial capability in a real-world combat scenario. The Russian shield does not just defend. It actively attacks the integrity of the data that modern warfare depends on. It is a psychological weapon as much as a technological one, leaving pilots questioning their own instruments and commanders questioning the viability of their mission, as the B-2 bombers were forced to bank away from their primary targets to avoid total system failure. The geopolitical reality became clear. Iran is no longer standing alone. They are now under a protective umbrella of high-tech Russian defiance that threatens to turn the Middle East into a graveyard for American technological superiority. The encounter was not just about technical glitches. It escalated into what military analysts call a digital cognitive attack. As the B-2 Spirit bombers attempted to regain control, pilots reported a phenomenon where the Russian shield was unjust blocking signals. It was actively hacking the digital reality that American stealth systems rely on to function. Intelligence data from earlier phases of the conflict suggested the United States had planned for a multi-day campaign, known as Operation Epic Fury. But they had never calculated for such direct and sophisticated interference from Moscow. The appearance of phantom targets moving at Mach 20 on radar screens did more than just overwhelm the aircraft's processors. It sowed a quiet panic among the elite pilots. They realized that within the airspace covered by this shield, the laws of physics seemed to be bent by electronic algorithms. At the Pentagon, data analysts are working feverishly for answers. Reports suggest that Russia may have leveraged its GLONASS satellite network in conjunction with secret ground stations to create a perfect white space over Tehran. This is a massive leap forward from the older S-300 systems that Iran previously used to threaten American F-15 fighters. The Russian shield is essentially an integrated defense system powered by artificial intelligence, capable of identifying the stealth signatures of the B-2 and responding by generating thousands of false returns. This rendered GPS and laser-guided smart bombs nearly useless, as they could not distinguish the true target from a sea of digital ghosts. The battlefield shifted from a lightning strike intended to last less than 50 seconds to a high-stakes, prolonged technological chess match. This interference sends a seismic geopolitical message. Iran is no longer an easy target for conventional air power, with Russian technological backing. Tehran has turned its skies into a testing ground for weapons described as being out of this world. Washington now faces the harsh reality that its multi-billion-dollar assets can be neutralized by an adversary without a single shot being fired. This event not only shatters the illusion of a quick victory similar to the perceived success in Venezuela, but also forces the United States to reevaluate its entire global deterrence strategy as Russia deepens its involvement in regional flashpoints. The strategic failure of the mission over Tehran marks a catastrophic shift in the projected timeline of the conflict. For months, Washington had operated under the assumption that a decapitation strike against Iran's senior military leadership would lead to a swift collapse of the regime. Similar to the initial stages of operations in other modern theaters, instead, the B-2 pilots found themselves trapped in a digital labyrinth where their precision-guided munitions were rendered obsolete. This failure is not just tactical. It is a profound blow to the credibility of American air superiority in the 21st century. As the bombers were forced to abort their primary objectives, the Iranian leadership, once thought to be on the brink of elimination, emerged more emboldened than ever. They are now operating under the explicit protection of a Russian military doctrine that views Iranian sovereignty as a red line. The implications extend far beyond the borders of Iran. In Tel Aviv and Riyadh, the news of the Russian Shield's success has caused immediate panic. If the most advanced stealth technology in the world cannot penetrate this electronic dome, then the entire security architecture of the Middle East must be reevaluated. We are witnessing the birth of a new era of asymmetric technology, where high-cost platforms are defeated by relatively low-cost but highly sophisticated electronic countermeasures. The Pentagon is now forced to confront a reality where their planned lightning strike has been countered by a silent, invisible adversary. This is no longer a war of attrition or a battle of firepower. It is a war of information integrity. The Russian Shield has effectively neutralized the first strike advantage that has defined American military strategy since the end of the Cold War. As the B-2 squadron returned to base, the political fallout began to ripple through the global markets. The realization that Russia has successfully tested a denial of access technology against the United States' most prized asset sent oil prices soaring to record highs. Experts suggest that the deployment of this shield was a calculated gamble by Moscow to demonstrate that its technology can still dictate terms on the global stage. For the Iranian people, caught between the threat of bombing and the uncertainty of regime change, this shield represents a stay of execution. However, it also signifies that their nation has become the primary laboratory for a high-stakes confrontation between world powers. The invisible wall over Tehran has not only protected a bunker, it has drawn a new Iron Curtain across the Middle East. The failure of the B-2 mission has triggered an emergency session of the National Security Council, where the mood is described as one of grim realization. The digital shield over Tehran has not only protected a regime, we are seeing a fundamental shift where the superiority of hardware is being replaced by the dominance of the digital spectrum. The Pentagon's top scientists are now analyzing the flight data from the aborted mission, trying to understand how a system designed to be invisible was suddenly surrounded by a sea of false data. Some experts suggest that the Russian Shield utilizes quantum-based signal processing. This is a leap in electronic warfare that threatens to make current stealth technology obsolete before the next generation of aircraft can even leave the drawing board. Any attempt to forcibly change the regime in Iran will be met with the full weight of Russian technological resistance. This is a classic move from the Cold War playbook. By providing Iran with this out-of-this-world defensive capability, Russia has effectively re-established itself as the primary power broker in the region. The United States now finds itself in a position where it must choose between a humiliating retreat or a catastrophic escalation that could lead to a direct conflict with a nuclear-armed peer. The less than 50 seconds window that was supposed to bring peace through a decisive strike has instead opened a door to an era of prolonged and unpredictable global instability. In the cities of Iran, the impact is being felt in a different way. The psychological boost given to the Revolutionary Guard and the regular military forces cannot be overstated. They now believe they are protected by a force that the West cannot touch. The world is watching a live demonstration of how the balance of power can be tilted by a single technological breakthrough. The Iranian leadership is using the time to harden their defenses even further. The invisible wall has changed everything, turning a local conflict into a global test of will and technological supremacy. The tactical silence following the failed B-2 mission speaks louder than any explosion could. This is the definitive end of the unipolar era of military technology. The Russian Shield has proven that the most expensive defense program in human history, the stealth bomber initiative, can be rendered ineffective by a sophisticated electronic dome. We are now entering a phase of global history where the invisible is seen and the invincible is vulnerable. Decapitate the Iranian leadership in less than 50 seconds was a miscalculation of catastrophic proportions. It was a failure not of courage, but of intelligence and technological foresight. The economic consequences are already reshaping the global landscape. With the realization that the United States cannot guarantee a quick victory in the Middle East, investors are fleeing traditional markets and seeking refuge in commodities. Gold and oil have reached levels never seen before, and the stability of the global supply chain is hanging by a thread. It is a preview of a larger and more complex struggle for global hegemony. The out-of-this-world technology encountered by the American pilots has effectively created a new balance of power, one where the digital spectrum is the ultimate high ground. In the coming weeks, we will see the true extent of the fallout. Diplomatic channels are frozen, and the threat of a wider war involving major nuclear powers is at its highest point since the 1960s. The lesson from this encounter over Tehran is clear. The shield is just as important as the sword, and in this new age, the shield may have finally won. Can adapt to this new reality, or if it will be sidelined by an adversary that has rewritten the rules of the game. The story of the Russian shield is not just about a single night of failure. It is about the dawn of a new and unpredictable world order, where technology is the ultimate arbiter of fate.